Preceptors, heroes, and villains on this episode of the Viral Unpacking Podcast. Let's go get it. Hey everybody, welcome to another Viral Unpacking Podcast with me, Charlie Swearingen. I got a good one today, I think. This is not necessarily medical directly, but the environment in the medical field that we typically find ourselves in and interacting. And this specifically has to do with preceptors. So this is we're brought this today by EMS Avenger. Awesome dude. And he's got about 22,000 followers and a ton of stellar posts. So what you need to do is go through and check this guy out. He and I've had several conversations on the phone. He's very much heavily focused on not only evidence-based medicine, but really just doing the right thing for the right reason and not just doing something because. And so what he's brought to us today is this post that I want to show you. It's a very short post, but we're going to dive into these comments and really talk about a tiny bit of what really is important. And so the one thing that I really like about EMS Avenger is he gets into some controversial stuff, just like Shade Tree, just like Sleepy and some of the other guys out, Sleepy Paramedic and some of the other guys out there. And by the way, EMS Avenger, one of the top TikTok names in EMS TikTok or EMS Talk, or however I best say that. So anyway, let's take a look at this post and kind of get into it.
This reply made me so angry that I had to re-record this reply like 30 times before I finally calmed down enough to leave a cool-headed, cogent reply.
Not to mention, he's incredibly articulate, which I really love. So, all right, he gets into it now. First thing we see in red, of course, abuse, precepting, and, it's got some little rage guy at the bottom right there. But what this says, because it might be small on your screen, great advice, which is probably in sarcastic overtone. He's saying, great advice. I had a preceptor who used to put a big 2-inch tape X on the bench when I screwed up and I was told to go sit on the X and then observe. So, if you make a mistake, it's like a timeout, like a preceptor timeout. And so let's see his response. I agree. I'm mad already.
This is not the action of a competent preceptor or FTO. And I would say that this person needs to be retrained, but they probably weren't trained properly to begin with. But think about this. If this is how a preceptor or FTO treats their students or their coworkers or their peers, how do they treat their patients?
Very quick, right? and this one, I think it's dropped today, and it's got 177 likes, got 38 comments, and this is really what I want to jump into. The problem with preceptors or otherwise the educational institution, especially specific with EMS, is that you have to it's so large and there's so many different moving parts and people, and it varies from state to state, county to county, area, region to region, and that creates a whole lot of variability. So sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. It's like the standard deviation, the bell curve, right? The bell curve, the idea is, that big bell-shaped curve, there should be in the middle a bunch of people doing the right stuff. And then on one side where it tapers off, some people are doing really exceptionally well. But on the other side, some people are doing exceptionally poor. And that's good for every single group of people out there doing their thing, whether it's EMS and education, or it's physicians, or it's engineers, or it's sportscasters, or every group has. You hope that median is wide, and that the tails off. That those are very low numbers actually out there doing their jobs. So, well, you want plenty of people doing great. So I guess ideally you really want a kind of a skewed tail. You want a bunch of people like pushed over to one side towards the greatness side, and then it fall dramatically to very few people really messing up. But not how it normally happens. Typically we have that standard distribution out in the world. And so jumping into what he says, in the end here, because there's so much variability, so much stuff out there that determines the education that you might personally get as a EMS student, whether it's EMT or paramedic or critical care paramedic or whatever, but you know, sometimes it's the way that you handle certain things, right? And so as a preceptor, you probably shouldn't handle being given a student or a orientee and just take your life out on them, right? So we all have problems in life. We all have these curveballs, and we have to go through the trudgery of the normal day to day. Some of us have kids. Some of us have 2-3 jobs. Some of us, have it all made. But still, no matter what you do and how you trudge through life, we can't get away from threats, or rather things that bother us or worry us. The difference between the hero and the villain in most stories is they both experience pain, i.e. the manifestation of actually having to trudge through life. Like something happens, I don't like that. That doesn't make me feel good. That's painful. It's how you handle it, right? That's the big thing. And so getting into this, one of the first people that kicked this off was Shade Tree Cardiology. We've done a couple videos on him. I could hear him say that. I'd lose my mind. This isn't teaching. This is boot camp crap, and it doesn't work in our world. And it, in the end, there is a certain time to be hard on somebody, but being hard on somebody doesn't mean you have to take away their dignity or to remove their dignity from them, or otherwise not give them respect, at least to, in the name of dignity. So yeah, and then EMS Avenger says, yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. That says, no, it's not boot camp. I was in boot camp in 1999. It was never humiliated like this. So true, Matthew Rice, right. Totally get that. The concept though is there, like people being a jerk. So this is even adding a layer onto that. Like not all people in boot camp treat people like this. Again, that variability pops up. But the whole point here is it's negative. And thinking back in the days, like I think a lot of times, like folks, especially like myself that weren't in the military, think back of boot camp. Like what we know about boot camp is movies, right? And so typically some of these guys are thinking maybe, what's the movie? Great movie. The first 45 minutes was awesome, and I'll put it up on the screen here in a minute. I can't think of it now. It'll pop up at some point. I'll just yell it out the rest of the podcast. Full Metal Jacket. There it goes. So remember the Gunny yelling at everybody with that anger and like really beating them up, break them down to build them up mentality. And that's really what I'm sure that most of these preceptors who are jerks do, is they're really just trying to break them down to build them back up. But the people who can, not everybody can do that. It's just like not everybody can intubate very well, or put an IV in the scalp vein of a infant, or do brain surgery, or kick a soccer ball with 3 people trying to get their to steal the ball from them, and them navigate around and sling it in the far corner of the net. Like not everybody is good at certain things. Typically people are good at something that they're really good at. 1 or 2 or 3 things, gifts that you're given. And, not everybody can be a preceptor. Now, let's take that another level. If you're not good at something, then you try to do the best you can. You keep trying to learn from it and that kind of thing, and try to improve, right? So as a golfer, I'm not good. I'm not a good golfer. You will not see me on the PGA Tour. However, I love going out and I love trying to get better and that kind of thing. Some people just go out and they don't care to get better. They just want to go out and drink and drive around, and that's cool. I mean, look, that's your choice. But when it comes down to a preceptor, the same thing can happen. You can have a preceptor who knows they're not great but doesn't care. They don't want to get better. And so what do? They fall back to stuff that is just kind of simple and in this case like demeaning, and stuff that maybe they've seen either in movies, or maybe this is how they were treated, and they can't break away from the villain hero mentality of when you're affected by something, how you handle it determines if you're the hero or the villain in stories, movies, stories, whatever. And the villain always takes it out on other people. The hero does what's best, tries to make the world better, leave it better than when they left it, so on and so forth. And so in this case, I see these preceptors as villains. I see them as villains, and it's like, what are you trying to achieve? And that's one of those things. So that's what we're kind of talking about here. And then EMS says, funny you said that. I was going to add that that at my boot camp, 69, it was isn't like modern boot camp, meaning, EMS Avengers saying like, totally get what you're saying. This was like back in the day when when people were allowed just to really just belittle folks in boot camp, which is the assumption here. I haven't been to boot camp, so that's just the assumption. And modern boot camp, so understands humiliation isn't productive. This is where this dude is a genius. And I honestly don't, he's been doing this for several months. I have no idea why he's not in the 100, 200, 300,000 likes and followers. Followers is the word I was trying to find a second ago. The dude drops like straight up fire knowledge. I mean, humiliation isn't productive. And not only that, I guarantee you, he can point to a paper that talks about that. Too often we talk about things out in medicine, especially critical care transport or transport medicine. We talk about like, oh, we should do this. Like, well, why? Well, I don't know. That's just how I was trained. Like, so this is where EMS Avenger does a fantastic job of jumping in and saying, well, here's the research for it. Why are we just doing something just because? So always have a reason. Too often we talk about folks who are in the ambulance and they've given like 500 mil bolus. Like, great, why'd y'all give that? Well, just because we had the IV. It's like, just because you had the IV. What was the reason? We just gave it. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's not the best thing, But if you say, well, they look dehydrated, their skin was a little tinted, we want to get them a little bit. Okay, great, man. Now I have a reason of why you're doing that. And he takes it those steps further. Of actually, in a lot of his stuff, he will have detailed lists of papers on his, we'll come back to this, but here on his link tree, guaranteed on the other side of this, he's got all kinds of, I guarantee when you go back there, he's got all kinds of links to papers and articles, and I've seen that before. So give this guy a shot. Let's get back to some of these. Had a few terrible students who have had to do something familiar, people who should have never made it into the field, right? So I get this. There's a way to handle a student without being, resorting to toxic behavior. Totally agree. Let's see what he says here. How about that? So if they are that bad, I'd send them home, document the problems, and contact the school. The couple bad students I've improved with coaching without them ridiculing. Yeah. And so that's it. So, this guy is I've had a few terrible students whom I've had to do something similar, people who should have never made it to the field. All right, let's back up. And we read some of the comments under that. I get where you're going, but a hero versus villain. I mean, how are you going to, it's what you do, how you handle tough, painful, uncomfortable, scary, terrifying, insert vernacular here, how you handle those situations. Right? You're going to be a hero, you're going to be a villain. And I'm not trying to steal hero from our warriors and all that stuff out there and first responder, other first responders doing absolute great things. But this is just the concept in, of course, literature, hero versus villain. But, how you handle that is how you handle it. And I think that there's a time to be tough, but you can also be tough without being ugly or demeaning, right? Let's see what other folks say. Johnny Devereaux here. Horrid. Everyone sorry, I'm not reading well today. Everyone know you can make a circle with the tape. Oh, okay, so he's talking about a cone. All right, fair enough. That's funny. So this is where the comments kind of get funny. Hunter Rebel here says you cannot train or retrain abuse just to disqualify them from training and never promote. Totally agree. It's just a culture. Bam, he nailed it again. Kablam. People will make comments and he will summarize it very elegantly and eloquently. Kablam. Look at that. So that's good stuff there. What is it? Why does it have to be an FTO preceptor? How about a partner? Say something. Don't go behind backs either. So two very cool things that this Andrew W90 says. So it could be a partner. Like, so right now I'm being hard on my partner and we tease one another, but I typically will ask him throughout the week that we work together, like, do I need to hit the brakes? Are we good? The whole reason I like tease him and poke at him, and it's all in fun. He pokes back. He's brand new. He's a young ICU nurse. Now he's flying with me, this salty old paramedic vet, flight veteran. But the idea is I'm trying to make sure that, he stays aware of things that are dangerous to either us as a crew or him, legally or clinically. And so I've figured out in this particular case, how to tease him a little bit. And I think that's a fine line. But if he were early on to say, no, man, I really don't like this, I would have immediately respected him, provided him with, made sure he knew I was trying to provide dignity. So I think that I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments about like, how do you juggle that? That's a handful of questions I'd like to get into in a future conversation. But in the end, it doesn't have to be just a precept. It could be a partner that's a jerk. Say something. Don't go behind people's backs. There's a lot to going to write to your partner, say, listen, I'm having an issue with you being a jerk. Like, so if my partner comes to me and says, dude, you're okay, I need you to pump the brakes. I'd be like, immediately like, my bad, brother. Look, what bothered you the most? Have I said other things? Let's start to rebuild this. And then I would have to figure out another way to help provide to him, enrich his brand new career with my experience. That's really all we're trying to do for the most part. Just some people are good at it, some people are bad at it. And I'm not saying I'm good at it. But in those cases, that's exactly what we would need to do. But I would hope he would come to me and say that. If he goes up the chain of command, you're totally allowed to do that too. But a lot of times I think that a lot of times we hide behind more and more people do not like confrontation and they don't want to go meet head on. But when you do that, and I've done this my whole career, and I'm way more soft-handed about it. I'm like, hey, listen, I heard this and I know that's a rumor, but I heard you said it and I wanted to get your feedback or I wanted to see if that was right or wrong. And if it is, like, how can I fix blah, blah, blah that I'm doing or whatever. A lot of times people immediately will walk it back or will say, no, I didn't mean it that bad. I was like, hey man, look, I get it, but now you're letting them know that like they're off the hook as far as the frustration piece. If you're really genuinely trying to do it to get better, to be better at whatever got them upset to say something behind your back, look, you just tell them like, look, all I want to do is get better. Your feedback can help me do that, and then all of a sudden they feel like they're in a position to actually give something, and now it's more meaningful than just being frustrated. That's just a lot of times what happens. We get frustrated at a policy or somebody does something or somebody doesn't do something. And then we're frustrated at X, Y, or Z. And then then that can fester. If you don't talk about it, you just talk behind their back, like to your partner or whatever, or your fellow crewmates, and you don't let this other person know. I mean, sometimes a quick like, hey man, you forgot X, Y, or Z, hey, you forgot this. Now, if they continue to fail to fix the problem, and then now we've at least established like, okay, there's a problem in line. I mean, I'm not gonna share with you guys what it is right now, but I got a big problem at work. There's something I don't do all the time that I need to start doing. I need to get better at it, and I made a decision this weekend. Like I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to fix this problem. Once I have it licked, once I have a good habit built, I'll share it with you. But I want to get the habit licked first, and then come back and share it with you. But in the end, just be mindful and go to people directly, ask them. And a lot of times if things don't get fixed, then you can go back to management or to them or whatever and say, look, man, we've been trying, but keep people's dignity. You being a jerk is almost never needed, ever. Right. And when I say jerk, I mean basically being ugly towards somebody via name calling or downputting, insulting, being sarcastically insultive, right? So the point where like you really didn't say anything ugly, but you're insinuating, none of that's needed, never. And so if you do that, like EMS Avenger and like so many others, one of the platforms here is I like going through the comments. I like calling people out. Like, oh really? Well, who are you? Because all of a sudden you have this, you said blah blah blah. That's a pretty bold statement. It's kind of a jerk. So you're safely behind your keyboard right now or your phone, typing all this in. Reveal yourself. Come out. Let's have a conversation about it. Because that's what really bothers me. And that's one of the things this podcast is going to be trying to do is to try to deep down get into those, find some of those folks and just kind of dredge them up. Be like, hey, why are you doing this? Or at least defend the people that they're being ugly to. Because a lot of times these people won't come and confront you because first off, typically most people know it's wrong. It just makes them feel good because again, hero versus villain, you're experiencing pain. How do you you see something that's frustrating, right? Pain is just of course, vernacular for anything that's not comfortable or not desirable. So in this example, and so, the villain who gets frustrated, they see something like, yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. It's like, all right, well, you could have handled that better. You could have been the hero and instead you're the villain. And it's a choice. It's a total choice. All right. Let's see here. Reminds me of my first ride. Didn't show me the truck. The truck was a mess, yelled and ridiculed me because I couldn't find the glucometer that they sandwiched in between the bench and the wall, hidden behind seatbelts and harnesses. Yeah. Unfair, savage. And I hope that you've done something great with your career, and I bet most likely people overcome this because most people in the end want to be the hero as opposed to the villain. Amazes me is that EMTs forget where they come from. Oh, preach. One of my best pieces of advice ever is like, you want to be a good paramedic, get really good at being a good EMT. And one of my favorite lessons. And so I even carry that now when I land at a scene. You got this EMS crew, maybe EMS and fire or in police or whoever's all there trying to do everything they can within their own respective spheres of power to take care of that patient. And I hear this all the time, and this is the same exact thing. Somebody said, not only preceptor, not only partner, but what about a crew member that's doing mutual aid? So if we land on the side of the road and I'm a jerk to you, you have every right to smack me in the mouth. And I don't think that I'm not advocating, again, let me back up because I'm not advocating violence. But what I'm saying is you have the right to be angry and to at least call me out on it, right? And maybe that's not the best time to. Maybe we do it later because patients got to come first. But my point is, and my point is, like, if anybody, we shouldn't be jerks to folks. If I show up in a flight suit and I just kind of completely dismiss you, wrong way to go, because we're all on the same team. And you know what? I personally don't do that, and I learned that from that message that Miss Talk a Lot says right here. What amazes me is that we forget that EMTs. What she's saying is, once you get to a level, don't look down at the people that are technically under your skill set. They still have a skill set that they can contribute to your skill set, and they're professionals. And it's, filtering out people that are jerks or really start being harmful, for the most part, utilize people's skill sets, right? That's just like a physician coming up to a paramedic or a flight paramedic or flight nurse or whatever, and just completely dismissing what they're like. We have a level of expertise that we are good at, and so do EMTs, so do AEMTs, so do first responders, so do folks with first aid training. Let's take care of those folks. And the whole point here is, and I think where I'm drilling down to, and we'll look at a couple more comments, but my final message is going to be the hero, not the villain. They get into talking about the number of preceptors that are, shouldn't be doing that. This person says, like, I don't know how to use the ambu bag. Well, so what good are you then? Jerk, villain. Preceptor's job is to coach their students to perform better. Ridiculing them doesn't teach or improve the student. Copy that. If they don't respond well to coaching, send them home for a day, document, notify the school. So this is I bet this is probably if the person's just a real jerk, but totally. I mean, our job is to coach. So how do we coach best? I mean, first off, to be a good educator, I mean, you have to be flexible. First off, you have to be knowledgeable. You have to know the stuff to the point where you can explain it incredibly simply. I think that if anybody that does like the teaching that I do, then I would imagine it's because I take complex topics and situations, and I drill them down into a very, very simple thought process from which, if you understand that concept, then we can later on add all the bigger vernaculars, all the bigger terms, and all the bigger concepts, the calculations that might go into a certain topic. But keeping it simple, you have to be able to describe it almost to somebody that's not in medicine, if we're talking about specific medical stuff. And so you have to be knowledgeable, you have to be flexible, and you have to be adaptable. And so those two words essentially mean a tiny bit different things, but those are very, very good features. You have to make adjustments and make sure that you're giving coaching the preceptor or the orientee or the preceptee or the student or whoever, the new hire, whatever, insert whatever student vernacular there. You have to give them, like, they need something, and not everybody accepts information the same. So you kind of have to figure out, like, how to adapt to them. That person is a really, really big introvert. You're going to have to do more talking. The extrovert, you're going to have to tell them every once in a while, hey, I like where you're going, but you're going off a tangent. Come back to this point here, right? And that kind of thing. Now, this isn't a lecture on how to be a good, how to be a good instructor. These are things that I know, these are features of good instructors, but it's not easy, and not everybody can do it. Going back to that point, sometimes, it's what we have, and sometimes what's really is bad is that people just either recognize that they're bad and don't care, or don't recognize that they're bad and therefore don't think they need anything, and then they propagate some of this stuff. And a lot of times it's just jerks being jerks. It's villains being villains. let's see. This is similar to someone's upbringing in life. Well, that's a philosophical piece that's probably true, but we're not going to get into. We must train ourselves to reach those interns, colleagues, and give them the opportunity to grow and develop. Absolutely. That's the whole point. Students so bad that I could not subject to a patient to their incompetence. We're not talking first ride day. I get it. This guy's coming back and arguing he was saying something earlier. Still, how about that? I would still say, like, man, it's how you handle it. I mean, do you want your peers saying, yeah, he handled that okay, or you want your peers saying, well, what a jerk, i.e., villain? My first preceptor made me sit on my hands and took over the call when I messed up on an IV. That's just jerk move, man. And we all know those people, man. So, we don't have to befriend them. We don't have to give them a whole lot of attention. Or better, would you be the better person if you recognize that? Say, hey, man, look, see how you're doing this. Why? Is there a reason you're trying to do this? Maybe at least if they had a reason, then I'd be like, I get it. But it's a good bit demeaning or X, Y, or Z. Now, I'm not talking about just being tough on somebody, and being curt and being direct to the point. I'm just talking about don't demean them, right? And so that's just one of the most important pieces, I think, here. All right, so I think we beat this up. I don't see a whole lot. There's a bunch of other examples. And in the end, man, in the end, be the hero, not the villain. And we all have to deal with the problems and drudgery and pain and comfortability in life. It's how we handle them, right? So hopefully be the hero. Be the hero. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. And, on the Viral Unpacking podcast, go check out EMS Avenger. Dude's awesome. And until next time, we'll see you.